Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about decimals, more specifically how to add with decimals, and we'll be using word problems as examples. To get us started, here we have Maria bought a notebook for $2.75 and a pen for $1.60. How much did she spend in total? So we have the notebook that cost $2.75, and we're going to add, because the question says how much did she spend in total, we're going to add that to the cost of the pen, which is $1.60. And basically what that means is we're taking the cost of the notebook, adding it to the cost of the pen to figure out the total cost of the notebook and the pen together. So in order to add decimals, the first thing we need to do is line up the decimal points so that the place values match. So here we have both our numbers, and notice that the decimal points are directly above each other. If I drew a vertical line, it should pass through both of the decimal points because we're lining them up so that we line up our place values as well. Then we're going to add zeros if needed so that each number has the same number of digits after the decimal point. In this case, after the decimal point, both of these numbers have 2 digits, so we could ignore that. Then we're going to add the numbers just like whole numbers starting from the right. So we have 5 plus 0 is equal to 5. Then we're going to move on to 7 plus 6, which is equal to 13. We bring down the 3 and we bring up the 1. Then we're going to move on to 1 plus 2 plus 1, which is equal to 4. Then our next step is to bring the decimal straight down into our answer. So we brought down our decimal point. So our answer is $4.35. Here, if we draw a vertical line, notice that all decimal points are lined up, even the one in our answer. And so the cost of the notebook and the pen together is equal to $4.35. That's how much she spent in total. Here we have our next word problem. It says Jordan ran 3 45/100 kilometers on Monday and 2 8/10 kilometers on Tuesday. How far did he run altogether? Well, on Monday, he ran 3 45/100 kilometers. We know we're going to add because the question says how far did he run altogether. We're going to add that to how much he ran on Tuesday, which was 2 8/10. And essentially what we're doing here is we're taking the kilometers he runs on Monday and adding it to the kilometers he runs on Tuesday to figure out how many kilometers he ran in total. So first, we're going to start by lining up our decimal points so that the place values match. And remember, if we draw a vertical line going down, our decimal points should match up. And then we're going to add zeros if needed so that each number has the same number of digits after the decimal point. Our first number has 2 digits after the decimal point, and our second number has 1. So we're going to add a 0 so that these numbers perfectly line up. And that means that now we have 2 digits after each decimal point, just to make it easier to look at. Then we're going to go ahead and add the numbers just like whole numbers, starting from the right. So 5 plus 0 is equal to 5. Then we're going to move on to 4 plus 8, which is equal to 12. Bring down the 2 and bring up the 1. And then we're going to move on to 1 plus 3 plus 2, which is equal to 6. And then we're going to bring the decimal straight down into our answer. And again, if we draw a vertical line, it should go through all the decimal points. So Our answer is 6 and 25 hundredths, and that represents the total kilometers that he ran on Monday and Tuesday together. Here we have another example which says a family drove 47 miles to the beach and another 2 4/10 miles to get to their hotel. How many miles did they drive altogether? So we know that the family drove 47 miles to go to the beach. We know that this problem is addition because the question asks how much they drove all together. And we know that they drove 2 4/10 miles to get to their hotel. So that means we're going to go ahead and add 47 plus 2 4/10. Basically, we're adding the miles it took to get to the beach to the miles it took to get to the hotel to figure out how many miles they drove in total. So, first, we're going to line up our decimal points so that the place values match. 47, however, does not have a decimal point, but because it's a whole number, we're going to add a decimal point to the end of it to make it easier for us to add. Then, we're going to line that up with 2 4/10. So if we drew a vertical line going straight down, it should touch both decimal points. Then we're going to add zeros if needed so that each number has the same number of digits after the decimal point. Currently, 47 does not have any digits after the decimal point, and 2 4/10 has one digit, so we're going to add a 0 here to make it a little easier to look at and add. Now we're going to add the numbers just like whole numbers starting from the right. So 0 plus 4 is equal to 4, 7 plus 2 is equal to 9, and 4 plus nothing is equal to 4, and then we're going to bring down our decimal point. And again, if I drew a vertical line going down, it should touch all of our decimal points. So that means if this family drove 47 miles to the beach and then 2 4/10 miles to the hotel, then they drove 49 4/10 miles in total. Our final word problem says a melon weighs 5 kilograms and a pear weighs 25 hundredths kilograms. What is their combined weight? So the melon weighs 5 kilograms. We know we're going to add because the question is asking for their combined weight. And we're going to add that to the pear's weight, which is 25 hundredths kilograms. So we're going to add those together. And basically we're taking the weight of the melon and the weight of the pear and adding it together to figure out how much they weigh together. So the total number of kilograms both weigh. So first we're going to start off by lining up our decimal points. But 5 does not have a decimal point because it's a whole number. So whenever we have a whole number, we're going to add the decimal point at the end of the number. And then make sure we line up our decimal points with our other number. So again, if I drew a straight vertical line going down the middle, it should cross both decimal points. Then step 2, we're going to add zeros if needed. So we're going to add 2 zeros here just as place value holders to make it a little easier to look at and a little easier to add. And then we're going to add just as we would for whole numbers starting from the right. So 0 plus 5 is equal to 5. And then 0 plus 2 is equal to 2. And then 5 plus 0 is equal to 5. Then once we're done, make sure you bring the decimal straight down into our answer. And again, if I drew a vertical line, it should cross all the decimal points. So our answer is 5 25 hundredths. So the total weight for both of these is 5 25 hundredths kilograms.